Well, it's exciting for my wife and I to come back here, and we know lots of you, and lots of you we don't know, and that's good for a healthy, growing church. It's good to hear the church is growing weekly. Some of you look younger than you did when we left. Phyllis, I don't know what happened to you. Timothy, it's awesome. You know, we did invest quite a few years of our lives here, and I was thinking of this as we were worshiping. John wrote this to one of the churches. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in the truth. And when we come back and the church is thriving and growing and preaching the gospel, it's exciting for us. And the team here is just doing an awesome job. Yeah. Pastor Dan and Mariana. And you Brits there, we need some Brits to back things up. Pastor Larry and Donna. It's awesome what is going on here. The church is transitioning and growing as any healthy body should go. But, you know, we were mom and dad here for a lot of years, 12 and a half years. And now we're kind of like the distant grandparents that moved away. And speaking of grandparents, I brought a picture of 3 of our grandsons. Our granddaughter's not in there. Can we... And we took that last fall. Aren't they cute?
Yeah.
Take after grandma. That's awesome. Do you want to say anything in greeting, hon?
I don't think I have a lot to say. It's just we've been contemplating coming, and there's some strange emotions that come with that. And, you know, every stage of life you have to change, don't you? And we don't always like change. And I remember one time, Pastor Terry, even when we first started in the church, he would just move the chairs around just to shake things up, and people would come in and go, "Where's my seat?" And it was always, you know, proactive about training us to accept change, because if we don't change, we are going to diminish. And so we're just excited to come back and see all the changes that we've not had anything to do with, and just see that, you know, whatever the Lord is planting is remaining, growing, and flourishing. So this is a joy to come and see all the development and growth. And I love your new, you know, your new sharp look. It's wonderful presentation. We used to do 2 services. So we know how hard you work to put this together, and we appreciate all that you're doing.
Yeah, and we're blessed enough to be here on Valentine's Day, and it got me thinking about it. So happy Valentine's. Let's give everybody a happy Valentine's Day clap. I got thinking about that, you know, gee, I haven't even, where did that come from? So I looked it up, so I can sound really smart. No, now that we have Google, everybody can be smart if they've just got a minute or 2 to prepare. But St. Valentine is a guy that in about 200, and I got the date here, he was executed in 269, I think, AD. And what happened was, it was during the time of a Roman emperor named Claudius. And at that time, immorality was rampant. It's not too different than our culture today. Immorality was rampant. Polygamy was a big deal. In fact, the what do you call him, the Caesar, he decided that he was concerned that there was a lot of wars going on, that the men didn't fight as well if they were married. They'd fight better if they were single. And so he outlawed marriage. That's we're not quite there in our culture, but he outlawed marriage. But St. Valentine, a guy named Valentine, he was into preaching the Bible and preaching the Word, and he saw the value in marriage. So he was secretly marrying the Christians, and they caught him, and they brutally executed him, and so that's a happy story to start with. but that's where it came from. Today we're going to kind of spot around all over the place. We prayed and asked God and sought some of the stuff that we talked about before, just to talk about relationships in general. And we're going to focus kind of on couples, but really the things that apply to couples apply to all of our relationships. In fact, we believe that God gave us marriage to work out some of our issues, so that we can be a better Christian outside of marriage. And if we can't get it working well in our marriage, it's kind of upside down.
So if you can't be a Christian in your home with those closest to you, are you really a Christian at all? Is the challenge that we face. You know, I got to be a Christian toward him, and if I can just do that, he's going to be blessed.
First thing we want to start talking about is some of the differences between men and women. And today in our culture, and it's going to be light, I think, today, but in our culture, they're teaching us that we're all the same. And we know that that's not true, but we kind of buy into that. and they want us to believe that everybody's the same, but they're not. Can we have that one about going to the Gap, that picture? Now this is a little map. The woman is in red, and the mission is to go buy a pair of jeans. And,
In our relationship, it's really stereotype doesn't work, because if he's going to go buy a car, he's in every car lot in the province before he decides. I drive into one car lot and go, I like the color of that one, I'll take it.
So when we look at some of these little things, it's not exactly, you can't just stereotype it, because that is true. She'll go get what she wants, but maybe it's my Scottish grandmother, but I have to find the absolute best deal.
Yeah.
I will drive across town in Regina, spend $7 on gas to save 32 cents. Let's just look at the next one there, the amplifier there. This is kind of a machine, how you control men and women. And
I'd say this one's right in our relationship.
this one is true at our house, yes it is.
There's nuance to everything in my life. Yeah.
Anyway, we thought that was funny. And for the newlyweds, those that are just starting out, we thought we'd show you this next slide about your chances of winning an argument.
This is true.
When you're dating, it's kind of 50-50. You get engaged, it drops radically. And then when you get married, it just forget it.
And whether you're right or wrong, the cost of winning just gets to be too high, doesn't it?
So anyway, on the way in this morning, I was surprised to find in Regina this morning, when I got up and turned my truck on and we started to drive, it was 4 below. And when we got to Moose Jaw, it was 11 below. On my truck. And I thought that is rare, because usually it's warmer in Moose Jaw than it is in Regina. Almost that's one of our griefs of moving to Regina. The biggest one was leaving you guys, but it's always a little cooler. But this morning I thought, well, isn't that neat? And then I got thinking, what keeps Moose Jaw warmer? And I thought maybe it's the warmth of your hearts that keeps this area warmer all the time. And then I thought, well, why is it colder this morning? I hope that's not a reflection of the reading we're going to get. Anyway, enough silliness. Now you wanted to share some stuff on that.
We're going to be just talking a wee bit to start out with the gender differences. And I've done some interesting studying this year into how we've been affected as a culture by even old teachers like Plato and Aristotle, and all those thoughts that creep in and create sort of a foundational position for people in how you approach the issue of gender. And some people really thought that Plato was, a friend to the feminist. He was on women's side, but it's not so. Because at the foundation of those philosophies, they started with the idea that women are a necessary evil. Really, and men might be sort of, they're quiet, but they might be thinking similarly to that I can't live without them, but it creates so much havoc in my life to have femaleness around me. And some of you that have lots of girls, you're gonna, but you know what? God didn't think that women were a necessary evil, not an evil, but that it's not good for man to be alone. And men and women are purposefully created differently, but both in the image of God. And we need each other. And we need to acknowledge, to know, and embrace the differences of femaleness and the differences of maleness. And sometimes with my husband and I, we have to remind each other, and I say, well, you didn't marry a man. You married a woman. And he's like, thank you, God. Okay, so there are differences that are going to come up from time to time, and it sometimes isn't going to feel smooth or comfortable because it's not what you're familiar with. But it's a good design. And I just wanted to start with that. And that, men marry thinking the woman is not going to change. That she's going to be the same one he knew as he was dating. But they get married and she changes. Women marry man thinking he's going to change. And he doesn't. So there's some conflict there. But the world idea of love is often... The world's idea about love is more of a consumer issue. isn't it? It's more of a, like, I'm going to marry this person and they're going to meet my needs and I'm going to extract from them. I'm going to enjoy them and they're going to meet my needs and life will be better. And that's a consumer thing. Like, I like this ice cream, so I love ice cream. And I'm going to enjoy this ice cream and I'm going to consume this ice cream. And when it's done, I'm going to throw away the cone. You know, and people are doing that with marriages now. That's what they're doing. It's a consumer idea. And this is not what God had in mind, because he said, greater love hath no man than this, that he would lay his life down for another. And that's the kind of love that we are commanded. And that's the kind of love that's only ever going to meet that need in us that we've been designed with, to love and to be loved. And if our love to be loved is higher than our desire to love someone else, we're always going to live in frustration, you know, with that empty ice cream cone. Where did my ice cream go? And so both of us are made on purpose in the image of God. And when God created a woman, he said, I will make him a helper suitable. And the helper, if you go back into the Hebrew word, the azer, that word is used in Genesis for woman. And every other time that you see it, it's used for God. It's used for God himself, an azer, your help, your shield, a defense. So, I mean, woman has been given a very high and honorable place. And it's not only just about making him better. It's about us being fitted together. A helper suitable is when the pieces of the puzzle all fit together to make a one. And so whether you're talking about a male-female intimate romantic relationship, or whether you're talking about just functioning in society, we all are in the image of God and are purposefully made that way. So being a woman is not a mental illness, as Plato and Aristotle would like to have had us believe, and we don't need to be fixed. Thank you very much.
Well, relationships are hard work, you know, and marriage is hard work. In fact, when this is kind of an anniversary of sorts this weekend for us. 34 years ago this weekend, we got engaged at a church function in Prince Albert, Free Methodist Valentine's Day supper. We got engaged, and so that's kind of give the Lord a hand. 34. And we got married that year. We didn't wait 700 years to get married. We thought, if we're going to do this, let's do it now. But
That's
I
right.
remember when we announced to my mom, I went in at her kitchen table and told her that we were going to get married. My mom always liked my wife. In fact, it was the only girl that I ever dated that she did like. And in fact, I think she likes you more than me. But that's some personal pain I'm working through. But when we told her that we're going to get married, she said, "Oh, you poor things." You know? And
our friends didn't think we would last because we were both too fiery.
Yeah, and we were fiery. That's those of you that know us. We're both strong-minded, strong opinionated, and so our marriage has been work. It's been hard work, but it's been worthwhile. And you know, Jesus said that we were going to be transformed from glory to glory into the image of his Son. That's inner transformation of how we act and how we treat people and how we treat each other, how we respond to events, how we respond to other people. And that transformation is hard work. And we believe that marriage, for married couples, that is the place where that can be worked out, so that if you can get that ministry going where your marriage is coming along and you're acting Christ-like in your marriage, now you're in a position to be a minister outside of your marriage. In fact, one of the qualifications for leadership in the church is that you get your home worked out. You get your own family life worked out. Now, why is that? Because if you can't work it out at home, everything that you have is just artificial. It is you're hypocritical, because if you're a Christian out there and you go home and you're some kind of monster, that's not Christianity. So it's going to start inside. Now, you know, I can just feel waves of condemnation coming over people, because not one of your homes is perfect. Not one of your relationships is perfect. He's transforming us from glory to glory. And so that place to work out your personality issues, to work out your love issues, to work out how to treat people, we believe it should start in that closest relationship and for a married couple, that is their marriage.
That's right.
And so how do you react to each other? Well, I was thinking about what's the genesis of this problem? Where does this start? And then I thought, that starts in Genesis. So we're going to go back to Genesis chapter 3. You got your Bible, Genesis 3:16. Do you want to read that one? That's about the girls.
Sure. To the woman, he said, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. How many think that's a recipe for some conflict? Well, if you know God, we know that God has created a certain order, right? God is at the head, and then Jesus, the husband, the wife. We often struggle with what does all that mean. But at the same time, I just want to focus your attention on the word desire. Your desire shall be for your husband. And that word in the Hebrew is Sheshua. I don't know if I've said it correctly or not. But the Hebrew word is a poetic meaning. It's not like one English word that has one meaning. It's very full. And it has like the nuance of like a thirsting, a stretching out, a longing. It's an intense longing. And if you look at the nature of women and how they've been exploited in the media and different things like that, the desire in that woman is for his desire, for his attention. The other places that word is used is in Genesis 4:7 when the Lord is trying to encourage right behavior in Cain, and he says, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is Jeshua. It's longing and it's thirsting and stretching out after you. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. And then it's used in the Song of Solomon. I think it's only used 3 times maybe in the Old Testament. The Song of Solomon, when it says, I am my beloved's, and his desire is for me. So that word desire is very, very, very intense. And he says, your desire shall be for your husband. And so, I remember in the early days when I had little children at home and my husband would be out at work and I'd be waiting. I just want to tell him about my day. I'm waiting for the day to talk to an adult. I'm waiting for him to come in through the door, and he's consumed with the thoughts of the day and what it has been for him. And he comes in through the door. He just needs to shut off and go into that nothing box like Mark Gungor talks about. But I didn't know that. And so when he goes off and he shuts himself off in the bathroom and takes his guitar and a newspaper and he's ready to just shut off and go into that nothing, I took it as rejection. And so I would go into the kitchen and start preparing supper, and I'm starting to fume on my rejection. And so by the time he's ready to engage, I'm like, don't touch me. So, but even when I hate you, it's because I love you, right? But these are some of the ways that the differences between us can set us up for conflict. And so I had to learn to respect his design. But the desire for a woman to be desired, to be the object of her man's affection is very huge in the relationship.
And, we just sometimes do some teaching on divorce-proofing your marriage. And one of the things is there's a couple of really good books, Wild at Heart and Captivating, by John and Stacey Eldridge. And in the book for the women, they pose this one question that every woman is trying to answer, and that is, am I desirable? And so her desires for her husband, she's trying to know that she's desirable. She's trying to know that she captivates his heart. She's got that question always in her heart. And if the husband doesn't answer that question for the wife, she's vulnerable for somebody else to come along and try to answer that. And the same applies for the husband. It's a different question that the husband is answering. I want to go back to Genesis, and we're going to talk a wee bit about what men are looking for. According to Genesis, chapter 3, verse 17, then Adam the man, he said, cursed is the ground for your sake. In the toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground. And we see in this passage kind of the general nature of a man is to work and to work and to work and to work. The woman's not feeling loved. She communicates that in many ways to the man, and he thinks, well, I'll just work harder. I'll bring home more money. I will provide better. And you get this cycle going. That's not what she wants. She wants his love. She wants his attention. She wants to know that I captivate his heart. And he's trying to solve her problem with his solution, and that's to work harder. You know, and it brings out problem. Men are trying to satisfy this question in their heart by their job performance. And I got to work harder. I got to rise up more. They're continually trying to prove that they're a man. And in John and Stacey Eldridge's book, they say the basic question that the man is trying to answer. Now you see if this holds true for you. Do I have what it takes? Am I really a man? And so in our hearts, we have this gnawing at us to perform and to work, and we have this question that needs to be answered. And so what does a man need from a woman? He needs her to help him answer that question. Yeah. You're all that. I'll tell you. I love it when my wife comes up to me and says, you're it, baby. She used to say, you look the sexiest when you have your tool belt on. I think it was an ulterior motive to try to get the house fixed up there. You know, and so the man has this basic need. We can call it for respect. We can call it whatever we want. But the wife, one of her jobs, even as the man has to let the wife know that she's lovely, that she's desirable, that she's meeting that need, the husband has that question, am I doing it? Am I making it? Am I enough? Can I? And so if the wife doesn't answer that question for the husband, now he's vulnerable for someone else to come up. And boy, you're all that, buddy. And we got the recipe for disaster.
Can you imagine if at home it's not going so well and you're feeling like a failure, and then at work somebody else is like, wow, you know, it's going to make you feel a little vulnerable, and it will have nothing, the attraction to that person will have nothing to do with who that person is or how it'll be like that ice cream cone, you know, but that's talking to an inner need that you have to be respected, to be desired, to be loved and thought of.
Sure, you get lots of great teaching here. We're going to move on from that a little bit, but to understand those inner core questions that each of us is trying to answer. Now, in a relationship with a couple guys working on the building program at the church, there's different relational needs that meet. But as Christians, we should be working to try to meet the needs of some other people, not just have our own needs met all the time. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's trying to find out what the other person needs and give them something that they need. I remember when we were in Moose Jaw years ago, and I was out in the living room flipping channels, you know, watching nothing, just flipping channels. And I could hear my wife, this is in the years before we had a dishwasher. She thought that was, you know, crazy new technology. And so we didn't have a dish. She's out in the kitchen rattling dishes. And all of a sudden, this wave came over to me. Boy, I love my wife. She's so awesome. And I walked out into the kitchen after, put the remote down, and I came up behind her, and I gave her a big hug. And I'm about to tell her I love her. And she says, if you love me, help me with the dishes.
Okay.
See, I was trying to tell her I loved her in the way I communicate love. She wanted something different. So, trying to meet those other people's needs. I want to talk about something. This is, we're going to change channels here a little bit and talk about keeping God first.
Wait. No.
Oh,
let's not change channels quite yet. I think that this is really important. We need this opportunity to look at, okay, when we get into those frustrating points where our needs are not being met, and you will have them, you know, to be able to have this supernatural understanding of what God does require of you in a relationship requires supernatural revelation, because it's not our human nature. So guaranteed, you're going to have these times where the other person is not meeting your needs. And so you have a choice at that point that that puts you in a very dangerous place in your walk with the Lord. Because, you know, when I married him, I loved God first. And I said to him, you will never take the place that God has, but at different times in my life, he has in my heart. Where I've been lazy in my intimacy with God, I have put that onto him, and I've expected him to meet those needs for intimacy and love, and he never, ever will be able to fully. The better he does, the better it'll get. And I really believe that God intended for our marriages that they can be like heaven on earth. They can be the best thing that there is, but it can also be feeling like a scourge and a curse in your life. But the answer is never trying to extract more ice cream from that guy, or that woman. The answer is found in going to the Lord for the thing that you need, knowing that He is my beloved and I am His. To stay there. And that may seem like just words to you, but that is the answer. And that's the thing that we have to dig into for the answers, because out of the overflow of my love and being rooted and grounded in love with the Lord is my ability to love Him unconditionally. And then that starts to feed, it pumps that well, primes that well. And the side effect is the love and the satisfaction. So I can be an expert in trying to make this marriage work, but it's not going to until I go to the one who authored it, the one who designed us to be a prophetic type of Christ in the church. He designed us to work that way. That's how it works, and it doesn't work any other way. And so when I get into the place of putting my focus on Him to get my needs met, I'm in a place of idolatry. And so I want to lay that word out for you as we move on. And he talks about the next section, that you cannot put your spouse above God, or it is idolatry, and the machine will not work, and the fruit of it is going to be sour.
Wow. Well, I want to talk a little bit, it's kind of building on that of keeping God number one in our relationships. And this works in friend relationships, all kinds of relationships. And particularly in a marriage relationship, we see it really clearly. Now, one of the favorite passages when we do weddings, this verse is almost always talked about from Ecclesiastes 4:12. Now, you'll remember this one. Though one may be overpowered by another, two can withstand him. And this part here, a threefold cord is not quickly broken. And we get that imagery, and as a guy, I see the imagery of a cord with three strands, and there's me and my wife and God at the center of it, but to me, in my life, it's like two little silk strands and one steel cable, because God is an unshakable, unbreakable rock. And so if we cling to Him in our relationship, our relationship will be stronger. Right. And when we start to ignore God, that's when we can run into trouble. And so this is true in marriages, but it's also true in relationships. If I have a fear of God in any relationship, I'm going to treat the person that I'm in relationship with a different way if I'm conscious of God and know who He is and how He's called me to act, how He's called me to live, how He's called me to respond to situations. There's a strength in that. He's central in the relationship, and you're just going to treat people differently when you're conscious of God. God needs to be number one, and this shouldn't change when we get married. Now I'm trying to explain that. Deuteronomy 6:4 says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and with all your strength." Jesus repeated that instruction in the Gospels. Love for God has got to be more than love for a spouse. And when God is first in your life, it will lead you to have a proper attitude towards your spouse or to whoever you happen to be in a relationship. And so that love for God, out of that reverence for God flows a pure.
As a matter of fact, when Jesus was praying for us before He's facing the cross, that was a huge part of what you'll find it all through from John 14 through 17, where He's praying for us to be one, even as He and the Father are one, and that we would be known by this love. And so our love in a relationship should be like a sign and a wonder to the rest of the world. It should be way above. And that is not only prescribed for marriages, but for every relationship, that our love for each other is a sign and a wonder to the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I want to stress again that what we learn in marriage could be applied to all the relationships in our life. This fear of the Lord, Psalm 111:10 says this: "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all those who do His commands." And so if our basic basis in life and relationship, in our marriage and other relationships is God and a fear of God, we're going to live out of that fear of God. And then some of these other things start to kick in. Ephesians 5:21 says, submitting to one another in the fear of God. So we have a fear of God, and this is why I'm submitting here. Sometimes I'm in situations, my natural tendency is to poke you in the nose right now, but I'm the pastor, and I'm counseling you, so I'm not going to do that, because I have a fear of God. And it modifies our behavior. It modifies how we act. Why? Because we know God is ever present. God is the central strand in this relationship here, in this situation right now, and we want to live that way. And getting married doesn't, I've got this in my notes, doesn't nullify Christian basics. We've counseled many couples, and the way they treat each other, we've heard women say, I wish he treated me as nicely as he does the waitress at Humpty's. Yeah, you ever been involved with somebody, they're just so nice, butter wouldn't melt, and then it's just, that's backwards. We should get our relationship worked out in our marriage, and there should be an outflowing of that. Yeah. What are some of the Christian basics? We could preach on this for hours, but consider others better than yourself. Well, if you're in a relationship, God has called, not a marriage, just any relationship, to consider other people better than yourself. Well, how much more in your marriage? Or forgiving one another. Or he can't forgive you. Well, how about in our marriage relationships or in our friendship relationship? If we won't forgive one another, that's a Christian basic. That should be certainly found in our marriage. Or not judging one another. Okay.
Well, that's a really important point, not judging each other. And there was a place in our relationship where we both were able to observe when judgments were held against the other person. It's almost like it locked you into that behavior from which you were being judged about. Like if he comes in and he's saying, oh, she's going to be really grouchy with me when I walk in. He comes in and he's ready for it. He's braced himself. He's judged that. I would feel it pulled out of me almost like witchcraft, but seriously, and then if I was judging him that he's like this, then it actually pulls that behavior out of that person. And the Bible will back that up, because, it says whatever we loose on earth is loosed in heaven, whatever we, the verse I'm talking about. There is a power that our judgments will hold each other captive in a certain behavior. And so we have to, how do you get rid of those judgments, though? That's part of it. And learning how to pray and speak the word over that person until you're in a revelation about them, till they are released from that.
If we can start to get some of the basic Christianity working in marriage, instead of drawing the worst out of people, you're freeing the Holy Spirit to move in their lives and actually bring about positive change. But as long as you're holding them in unforgiveness or judgment or not submitting, you're restricting God. You're holding back His power. Now, you wanted to say something on that, or have you done that?
I pretty much did that. There's that it's their marriage is a training ground for being a Christian. So if you're not being a Christian at home, are you being a Christian at all? And the witness to the world is important, that be the training ground for you right in your home. But one of the things that I have heard people do, that they feel like because it's easier to be a Christian outside of their marriage and things are hard there, they've often said, well, maybe I married the wrong person. Because I'm so successful without that person. No, it means that you're failing the test. You're really not doing it. You're fooling yourself if you think, because it's easy outside. Yes, of course it is. Because right when you're in that relationship with that person in your home, they know who you are. You're dealing with who you are, and God has given you a blessing and an opportunity to begin to really let Him have your spirit and your soul and your personality, to just surrender to Him and let Him transform you. And so if you think you...
That verse where Jesus is talking about, He doesn't want whitewashed sepulchre. He doesn't want the outside clean. He wants the inside clean. And if we look at our relationships, if we have the outside clean, that's hypocritical. He wants the core relationships to be Christian.
Exactly.
And that to flow out into the outside. So we're clean.
Yes. So the question is not, did you marry the wrong person, but are you being the wrong person? And if we will submit ourselves to the love of God, I believe your relationships can and will be happy. So, I mean, if you think about the sand ceremony that some people do at their weddings, where they mix 2 bottles of sand together, that sand mixes together, and the idea of that covenant is it's impossible to separate them. So if you've been joined together by God, you can't say that person is not my spouse or shouldn't have been my spouse. Just the same as you can't say this child that came from my body should not have come from my body, because you are one.
So we're going to kind of have to wrap it up. We're running out of time here, but I just want to, on that thought, I want to add one more dimension to that. You can't blame your ungodly behavior on somebody else's ungodly behavior.
No.
I don't know if that makes sense to you, but we hear that again and again. You know, someone else's behavior is not an excuse for you to go bizarre. You know, they're crucifying Jesus on the cross, and he's saying, Father, forgive them. He could have called legions of angels to crush him. It didn't change his behavior. In fact, he submitted to that, and through that, the power of God was released. And this isn't gender specific. It's not just for men, or it's not just for women. It's for all of us. You know, Peter said this, speaking to wives, but it's not just the wives. It works for husbands as well. So wives, likewise, be submissive to your own husbands, that even some that don't obey the word, they without a word may be won by the conduct of their wives. And here we have God saying, if the wives will just live in a godly way in response to that, they can win their husbands. And the same works for the husbands. Just acting in a godly way will have power released in their lives.
Amen. Well, I've seen that lived out in our lives. I really have. I mean, there was a time in our lives where I called my mom to complain about this alcoholic and that I couldn't stand him, and she just said to me, "You don't speak about my son-in-law like that. You speak the word over him. You speak the plan of God over his life." And she taught me how to pray the word over him and to release him from my judgments. And I saw him transform, and I saw him come to the Lord. And we've seen it with our middle son as well, begin to just prophesy and speak the word over them and declare that. And he's a radical troublemaker now, even more than his dad was when he came to the Lord. So telling people, you got to repent and live right. So, I mean, I've seen it in action in many, many, many places.
And we don't have time. I was going to take you through Ephesians, where there's instructions for husbands and instructions for wives, but we're going to kind of glaze over that. But I'm going to say this one more thing. There's no perfect natural marriage for you to have as an example. You can't look at any earthly marriage and say, well, I'm going to be just like those guys. Now, you can have somebody that's modeling to you and somebody that's discipling and leading you. But if you pattern your marriage after this ministry or that ministry and they fall, then you're going to fall. God didn't say pattern after this marriage or that marriage. He said pattern your marriage, pattern your relationship after Christ and the church. Right. This is the pattern. Jesus gave his life up for the church. So husbands should give their lives up for their wives. And the church submits itself to the husband, to Jesus. And so wives ought to submit themselves to their husbands. Yeah. And God has given us this pattern through Christ and the church. This is how we build our lives. This is how we build our relationships. And so, I don't know, we're going to just kind of wrap up here and close. I'm going to go down here to my little summary. I like to summarize at the end because we talk so much you don't know what we're talking about. But my first point is viva la difference. We are different. Yeah. Be happy about it. Don't fight it. Don't try to get your, ladies, don't try to get your husband to be like your best girlfriend. He can be your best boyfriend, and he should be, but he's not going to be able to understand all your emotional highs and lows. And if you take all your problems to him, he's going to try to fix some of them. And guys, don't try to fix all your wife's problems. She just wants to talk. Let her talk let her know you care.
Can I just want to just pull in into that one just one little bit. Just as much as she needs to be desired, she needs to be known. Like it says, Abraham knew his wife, and there's something in that, that will thrill in a woman when she's known. Like when you listen to her and you don't try to fix her, what you're saying to her is, I want to know you. And that is so deep.
And I remember that movie, that
Avatar.
is very new age Avatar, but I liked it because of the flying on animals and stuff. It was really cool. So I want to take my wife to it. She hated it.
The one line out of that is, I see you. And it's like, yes! That's it.
Riffed on that for quite a while. So I want to be known, and ladies want to be known. And so there's differences. Let's learn to minister to each other in those things. Keep God number one. That's another point that we talked about. He's got to be central. If you're going to make this thing work, keep God central, not just in your marriage relationships, but as you're working with other people. Remember, God's with you, and live accordingly. And the next thing we talked about is Christian behavior isn't to be neglected in marriage. In fact, that's the place where we strengthen our Christian behavior, and it starts to transform every relationship in our lives. And finally, Christ in the church is your model. We didn't have time to go through all of that, but that's in Ephesians. Read through there. There's some awesome stuff on there.